Forests can be an idyllic place of peace, and to many, woodland trips in the winter bring about thoughts of gentle snowfall, frosted pine trees, and the crisp ice crunching beneath each step. In the heart of winter 1998, 3 generations of a family scoured woodland in order to find a tree for Christmas. However, the youngest of the trio disappeared in mysterious circumstances, and the fate of the boy remains unknown. Derrick James Engebretson was born on the 5th of July 1990 in Klamath Falls, Oregon, and was the 3rd child of Robert Engebretson, a mill worker, and Mollie Engebretson, a craft store manager. Derrick had 2 older siblings, a sister, Amy, and a brother, Kenny. Derrick was extremely passionate about the outdoors, and because of this, he was given the affectionate name of Bear Boy. Derrick spent much of his childhood hunting with his father and often went mushroom picking with his maternal grandfather, Ben Davis. Derrick and Ben had a close relationship and were almost inseparable. According to a Blogspot site, Laurie, Derrick's mother, carried him in her backpack whilst on a bear hunt when Derrick was just 1 week old. It seemed that adventuring in the wilderness was in Derrick's blood. On the 5th of December 1998, at approximately 2 p.m, 8-year-old Derrick, his father Robert, and his grandfather Bob Engebretson decided to travel 45 miles from their home in Klamath Falls to Pelican Butte, a densely wooded area located in the Cascade Mountains, Oregon. The trio had one goal in mind that day: to find the perfect Christmas tree for their disabled neighbour. The Engebretson family had already purchased their Christmas tree. However, for the first time in many years, they had purchased an artificial pine rather than a real one. During the journey to Pelican Butte, a place that the family, including Derrick, knew well, Robert told his father, Bob, that they would have to be quick-smart in finding a tree, as darkness would soon fall shortly after 4 p.m. After arriving at the snowy Rocky Point area of the Winema National Forest, Robert helped his 8-year-old son get into a blue-coloured snowsuit before the trio made the treacherous climb up a nearby embankment to reach a copse of pine trees where they would chop down a tree for their neighbour. Robert, being the fittest out of the 3 and the most experienced outdoorsman, powered on ahead, leaving Derrick with his grandfather Bob. Derrick loved the snow and began using his hatchet to chop at much smaller trees, much to the annoyance of his grandfather. Derrick then told his grandfather that he wanted to catch up with his father, and although he was still frustrated, Bob allowed Derrick to do so, the young boy ascending the hill in his father's footsteps. At around 3 p.m, Robert and his father, Bob, met up somewhere along the embankment. However, Robert was immediately concerned as he could not see his son. Upon questioning his father regarding his son's whereabouts, Bob said that he thought Derrick had caught up to his father, but he hadn't. The 8-year-old was nowhere to be seen. At this point, the snow was falling heavily and darkness was beginning to fall. Robert frantically rushed up and down the embankment, calling out for his son, but was met with silence. The pair searched for a further hour for Derrick, but there was still no sign of him. By this time, it was pitch black and Robert had run out of options. He flagged down a passing car at approximately 4:13 p.m. and begged the driver of the vehicle to contact the police, and they did so, driving to a nearby resort to make the call. However, it took over 5 hours for a fully formed search party to arrive on the scene. The search and rescue team in Klamath County were having their annual Christmas dinner at the time, and for whatever reason did not treat this case as a matter of urgency. Therefore, the Oregon State Police had to get involved instead, which is why it took so long to gather a search and rescue team. The Klamath County search team joined the search later that night and into the following morning. Following their arrival at the forest located to milepost 12 on West Side Road, police, along with snowmobiles and sniffer dogs, scoured the woods with assistance from the fire department and aerial teams and helicopters using thermal imaging to aid in their efforts. However, a blizzard hit the area later that same night, and because of this, visibility was extremely poor. Therefore, the initial search for Derrick was hampered significantly. Clues such as footprints or tracks would have been heavily blanketed with snow, making it almost impossible to trace where Derrick had been. Authorities did find a, quote, crude shelter of fir branches beneath some fallen logs close to where Engebretson was last seen, leading some to believe that Derrick had perhaps built himself a shelter, but sniffer dogs that were brought in could not find any trace of Derrick's scent by the shelter. Before the blizzard hit, Derrick's father and grandfather, along with some other family members, found a snow angel embedded in snow on the lower embankment, and there was evidence of Derrick's small footprints leading toward a road at the bottom of the hill, his footprints circling in a loop before going downhill, but the footprints simply ceased when reaching the road. There were no signs that Derrick had wandered back into the woods, leading many to believe, including his own family, that he had been abducted by the roadside. Other footprints left by Derrick on the road had been obliterated by other vehicles, including a snowplow. Therefore, any trace of him on the road was now gone. Several pieces of chopped wood were also allegedly found nearby, bearing in mind that Derrick had a hatchet and was chopping at trees prior to his disappearance. Initially, the boy's mother was advised to stay at home as the snow was too dangerous to drive in. However, Laurie travelled to the forest anyway as she strongly felt that she couldn't sit back and do nothing. She needed to be there to help search for her son. The official search for Derrick lasted for a grueling 8 days, with hundreds of people trudging through the deep, treacherous snow, with authorities calling off the search due to fears that lives were possibly at risk. Despite their best efforts, no trace of the boy was found. The family continued to search despite the official search having been terminated. The family camped at the site in a donated camper van as the search continued for a further 2 weeks. However, the conditions continued to deteriorate and it was temporarily put on hold until the 18th of December, with the search recommencing in the early spring. Authorities concluded that Derrick had likely wandered off into the forest and as a result succumbed to the wintry elements shortly after he vanished. It is believed that Derrick was then victim to animal scavenging. However, his parents did not believe that this is what happened. Their son was accustomed to such elements and knew how to survive in the mountains. Laurie and Robert were certain beyond any doubt that their son had been abducted, but authorities disagreed. They believed that the boy was deceased. The Engebretsons carried out a number of independent searches over the years following their son's disappearance, but unfortunately yielded no results. Throughout the extensive searches of Pelican Butte, authorities did find a number of bones buried beneath a blanket of snow, some being found 2 years later in 2000. However, following testing, all were confirmed to be animal bones. Interestingly, a candy wrapper and a bookmark from Bonanza School, the same educational establishment that Derrick attended at the time, was also found near his last known location at Rocky Point, but these items could not definitively be connected to the 8-year-old. Rather sinisterly, blood was also found nearby, but it is unknown whether the blood was of animal or human origins. Allegedly, one witness came forward during the investigation and claimed to have seen an unidentified man struggling with a young boy in the area later the same day Derrick vanished. However, the witness initially thought that the pair were father and son until he learned of Engebretson's disappearance. Further reports suggested that the same unidentified man owned a black Honda and reportedly asked for directions whilst travelling through the forest. What happened to Derrick Engebretson on that winter's day in 1998 remains a mystery. Following Derrick's disappearance, the heartbroken Engebretsons were completely traumatised and guilt-ridden, struggling to accept what had happened to their son, so much so that they apparently returned to the mountains every single weekend following Derrick's disappearance in a desperate bid to find their son or anything which could indicate where he had gone. As a result of the draining searches and endless stress, all of the Engebretson family suffered mentally and physically. Laurie and Robert were practically bankrupt, having spent all of their money to search for Derrick, ranging from further forest and lake searches to speaking to psychic mediums. They had drained all of the resources they had. They eventually had to sell their house and move into a mobile home. Laurie started to experience suicidal thoughts, so was placed on antidepressants following her son's disappearance. She was extremely stressed at work and even started taking it out on her co-workers. As a result, she was given less hours at her job, which meant less stress but also lower wages. Robert also took a significant amount of time off work to spend every single day searching for his lost son. Robert subsequently suffered from pneumonia and frostbite to the leg after crawling through the snow for hours on end, desperate to find Derrick. Both of their children also went down dark paths. Amy, their eldest child, was a very intelligent 18-year-old, but after her brother vanished, her grades at school fell drastically, and she even turned to drugs to help deal with the pain she was experiencing. Kenny, the middle Engebretson child, shared a room with his younger brother, but seeing his belongings became too much for him, and as a result, Kenny packed up his brother's things and moved them into the garage, something which enraged his mother, but Kenny just couldn't bear to be reminded of what happened to his little brother. Robert Engebretson could no longer speak to his father, Bob, as he blamed him for losing Derrick. Bob himself was racked with guilt, so much so that he refused to ever talk about what happened that fateful day. The Engebretsons never recovered from their harrowing loss. Many of the locals gathered to support the Engebretson family, but a select few of others were unnecessarily cruel. A number of unfounded rumours circulated in the local area regarding the family's involvement in Derrick's disappearance, some claiming that the parents were somehow involved in his vanishing and even his supposed death, but this was purely speculation with no evidence to back up the claims. Both Derrick's father and grandfather passed lie detector tests in regards to Derrick's disappearance and are not deemed suspects in the case. On the 24th of September 1999, graffiti was found scrawled on a bathroom at a rest stop near Burns, Oregon, and although the contents of the graffiti has never been revealed to the public, it clearly referenced Derrick Engebretson's disappearance. A portion of the graffiti was sent to a laboratory for analysis, however, authorities concluded that the graffiti was nothing more than an elaborate hoax, something which angered and upset the Engebretsons. They had already suffered enough heartache without such a cruel joke being played on them. In 2004, it was revealed that authorities were looking into a convicted child sex predator named Frank James Milligan as a suspect in the case. Milligan, who was out on bail at the time, sexually assaulted and slashed the throat of a 10-year-old Salem boy in Dallas, Oregon in 2000. However, the boy miraculously survived. Milligan also abused a second boy, an 11-year-old, and as a result of both crimes was sentenced to over 35 years behind bars. Rather disturbingly, in 2001, a fellow inmate of Milligan's told police that he had confessed to killing the 8-year-old boy. The inmate also wrote a letter to the Engebretson family stating that Milligan had murdered their son. Investigators theorised that Milligan picked up Derrick from the roadside on the day he vanished. Upon being interrogated by police, Milligan admitted to killing Derrick Engebretson, but said that he would only plead guilty to the crime if he was spared the death penalty. Police asked Milligan to lead them to the site where he buried Derrick's body. However, he failed to locate the burial site and later retracted his confession to killing him. Despite not being charged in relation to Derrick's disappearance, Frank Milligan still remains a suspect. He owned a black Honda at the time, similar to the one seen by witnesses. Thorough searches of the alleged burial site were carried out by authorities, but unfortunately nothing of significance was found, only fragments of animal bones. The artificial Christmas tree that the Engebretson family purchased in 1998 allegedly lay in their home for 3 years following Derrick's disappearance, with the boy's presents lying underneath untouched. A year went by and hope of finding Derrick began to fade. The Engebretson family managed to move away from the trailer park to rent a small house in Klamath Falls, and in the years following eventually started to find their feet again, but Derrick was never far from their thoughts. Derrick was 8 years old on the day he disappeared and was described as being Caucasian with hazel eyes and brown hair with a cowlick fringe, standing at 4 feet 6 inches tall and weighing approximately 85 pounds. Derrick also had a number of small scars between his nostrils, under his nose and on his chin, all caused by dog bites. When Derrick was last seen, he was wearing a blue snowmobile suit, a size 12 or 14 denim jacket, a pair of navy blue Route 66 trousers, a black sweater, an Oakland A's t-shirt, a beanie hat, a pair of camouflage boots with felt lining inside, and a pair of Goosebumps gloves. Derrick was also carrying a small hatchet when he disappeared, however it has never been found. There are many questions regarding what happened to the young Oregonian. Despite being familiar with the area, did he get lost and succumb to the elements? Was he kidnapped, and if so, who took him and what was their motive? What happened to the hatchet? Where is Derrick Engebretson? Furthermore, there are frustrating aspects to the case, such as the search and rescue team ignoring the request for a search in favour of their Christmas party. If they had acted immediately and, crucially, before the snowstorm hit, what other clues could have been recovered? Near the terrain of Rocky Point, a memorial hangs in a tree close to where 8-year-old Derrick Engebretson was last seen. As of December 2019, the case remains unsolved.